Hi, everybody. Tim Hughes here. I'm here with CZ, and we're going to be talking about his book, Carnivore Leadership, taking charge instead of taking shit. I'm going to use the word because, the YouTube is going out as a over 18 video anyway. And I'm Tim Hughes, and I'm the CEO and co-founder of Aspirato.ai. CZ, thank you so much for coming on. Love the book. Never been in the forces myself, so I love to read about those sort of experiences. What was the inspiration behind it?
Inspiration for the book, Tim, was pretty much my operational experience during my time in the Tier 1 forces of the United States of America. Tip of the spear, special operations, and there's nothing that I wanted more than to be a part of that organization. So naturally, when I got in and I made the assessment and got accepted into the organization, I started paying close attention to the leaders above me and the people that had the experience, the basically the warriors that I wanted to emulate. Um, One of them was a chief petty officer that worked for DEF Group, the SEAL component of Joint Special Operations Command, Jim Hensky, and he was a very intense guy. And he always classified people into two buckets, the carnivores and the herbivores. Carnivores were definitely the go-getters, the ones that he wanted by his side. The herbivores or grass eaters were the ones that were worthless to the organization. And it resonated with me because when you look at the organization writ large, the Army component, the naval component, and the air component, it is the best of the best. And there are several gates and crucibles that you have to go through to prove your worth to the organization. So naturally, once you're in the operational environment, there's high expectations for who you are. So I started taking notes of what this culture was all about, learning from a lot of other different leaders, Pat's, Jim Hensky, and kept about 13 Moleskine notebooks. And I decided to go ahead and start writing down ideas to go ahead and motivate the forces on this mindset and culture that actually was very effective in combat. And that was the precursor for the book. And it started out as a leadership paper. It was a quick 5-page leadership paper with 20 quotes that resonated with me. And at some point, some publisher got a hold of it and said, "Hey, have you ever thought about making this into a book?" And I was just like, "Well, no, not really. I mean, the paper is what it is." And he's
Yeah.
like, "No, no, no. Hear me out." He said, "Elaborate more on each silver bullet
Yeah.
based on your personal experiences and then put it out there. I think that it's going to be a very worthy read." And that is exactly what we did.
So I forgot to ask you, where can people find you?
Oh, people can find me at www.carnivoreleader.com. There you will find my links to X, Instagram, LinkedIn, and Facebook.
Excellent. Okay. CZ, you rose from special ops to become the, is it SEAC, the highest ranking enlisted member in the US military. You've been in the absolute highest corridors of power. Why do you feel that right now is the right time for carnivore leadership to put this message out into the world?
I believe that for a while, specifically in the United States of America, we started glamorizing victimhood. Basically, if you had an issue and you became a victim, you got a whole bunch of resources thrown at you. Now, I'm not saying that I'm undermining people that are victimized by others. What I'm saying is that that became en vogue almost to go ahead and attract attention, to go ahead and create nonprofits, to go ahead and get money from the public. And I didn't subscribe to that because I honestly believe, coming from a background where I grew up with nothing, I didn't even speak English, and I came into a service just as an open general person, didn't even come in as a special operator. I learned that if you put in the hard work up front every day, and if you're true to your character, there's nothing that you cannot do. And the reason I decided to write the book was because I wanted people to start owning their existence, to start owning the outcomes of their life, and to actually just get away from this whole, oh, poor me, then people will pay attention to me. I think that there's a lot more that people can do for themselves and not blame some society for the hardship that they encounter. Now, there's going to be hardship, absolutely. And it's always going to be a reality that life is not easy. But the reason I wrote the book is for people to start taking charge instead of taking shit every day.
Uh, you contrast the carnivore mindset with the herbivore stance. For a civilian leader running a business or a team, what does herbivore leader look like, and what is the cost of letting that passive mindset creep into a culture?
Well, a herbivore leader is no leader at all. Those are the people that are reactive instead of proactive. Those are the people that decide to go ahead and look for scapegoats when they should be owning responsibilities for failures. And those are the ones that are quick to accept the gains of the organization without giving the proper credit to those that actually are putting in the hard work. The carnivore leader is totally the opposite. It is the one that is confident in their abilities. They know exactly what their worth and their capability is when it comes to the organization and the outcomes of the organization. And they're the first one to just stay a quiet professional when the organization succeeds, giving the credit to the proper people. And when the organization fails, they're the first one to go ahead and take the fault because they are in charge.
Excellent. And the subtitle of the book doesn't mince words, taking charge instead of taking shit. What is the common piece of shit you see modern leaders taking today, whether it's from their teams, their peers, or themselves? What do they need to stop tolerating immediately?
Well, I lived in an environment in special operations where you dealt with type A personalities, right? And it was all about bowing up. The one with the loudest voice typically got the stage and so on. And working across different services, like being an air component guy, obviously, you have the ground component, you have the maritime component, and you have the Marines. And in those cultures, it is all about who can best the type A of the day. So I decided never to back down to anyone. They can bow up all they want. But if they were wrong, I was going to call them out. It was plain and simple. And the whole taking charge instead of taking shit is for people to realize that if they're right, they don't need to back down to anyone. They need to go ahead and put the bullies at bay to make sure that they understand it's like, hey, wait a second, that is not going to work here. We're here to collaborate, not to go ahead and be contentious with one another. So that is the whole pretense of that subtitle, is for people to actually look at the situation for what it is and not necessarily give in to the personality that is the strongest in the room at that time. Because the other thing that I found out is that sometimes the people that are the strongest personality in the room are the ones that lack the most situational awareness or the respect and humility to realize that there's many other talents in the room that they should be listening to instead of trying to push their agenda up front.
You write that leaders are neither born or made. They are forged under the pressure of adversity. When you look back at your time in special operations, what was the specific crucible moment that forged your own leadership style?
I believe not necessarily a crucible, but a habit. And that was the habit of paying attention, to listen, to analyze my surroundings, to go ahead and look at the way people acted on different scenarios, whether it was a failure or a success. I always like to pay attention to see how the leader owned and handled each situation. And I always kept notes, and I always reminded myself that if I'm ever in a situation similar to this, that was the behavior that I want to exemplify. And that is the behavior that I definitely do not want to be associated with. So it was a learning experience based on a foundation of humility and understanding that, hey, learning never ends. No matter how old or young you are, every day is a learning experience. And the more we pay attention to the daily habits of us and others, the better off we're going to be when it comes to our leadership journey.
In the book, you introduced 20 silver bullets as an anecdote to standard canned leadership speeches. Can you share one specific silver bullet that you believe applies just as powerfully to a corporate boardroom as it does to the battlefield?
I believe that one of the strongest silver bullets in that book is amateurs train until they get it right, professionals train until they cannot get it wrong. And the reason I said this is because in the digital age nowadays, Everybody wants to be a flash in the pan influencer, putting together a perception for 30 to 45 seconds. So I'm the best, I know the most about this particular issue or product. And then they get followers, and they base their credibility on how many followers they have and not necessarily the experiences that they have when it comes to any given subject. So I always encourage young people to go ahead and start putting in the sets and reps to be able to go ahead and build experience and build credibility by actions and not by influence or just telling people how good they are. Let them be quiet professionals, let their experiences and their credibility speak for themselves, and that is what is going to open doors in the future for them to be in charge of things.
The word carnivore can sometimes evoke a picture of a ruthless, loud predator. Yet those who worked with you at the Pentagon constantly praise your humility. How do you balance being an aggressive, action orientated carnivore with staying deeply humble and a practicing servant leader?
It's an old Latin saying that says, temet noce, know thyself. I know that I can be very aggressive. I know that I can fly off the handle easy. It's my personality. I'm very aggressive in nature. But something that I learned when I left the special operations arena and got into the general purpose forces as a senior enlisted leader was that not every culture subscribed to that. And you needed to tailor your communication approach to the audience and not necessarily to your emotions. So I started taking emotions out of the equation. And I started taking a more rational approach to where I didn't need to tell people where I have been. I didn't need to tell people what schools I've been going through. That was pretty much implied. I was there to lead them to their success, not to boast, against my successes. So I started to just basically putting them first, listening to what they had to say, and then tailoring my communication approach to where I was able to get through to them without the fear of coming across as the person that I knew in the core I was. And that was an aggressive operator that needed to get stuff done now at any price. That is not what most people do.
I know that you say in your book, you talk a lot about how, as you've moved up in the organization, you have to change your attitude and communication, because there's a different. You need to communicate with different people at a different level and a different way of doing that, don't you?
You do, and again, that's the cardinal rule for any person that publicly speaks, right? Rule number one: know your audience. Rule number two: tailor the message to that audience. And that is just a rule that I always live by, regardless of whether I was talking with the highest generals and presidents or the lowest ranking junior service members.
If you have a great line in your papers, if you always strive to exceed the standards, you will always be right. But if you look for excuses to justify your shortcomings, you will always be wrong. How do you handle a team member who has habit of spouting excuses without destroying their morale?
Well, the best way to handle that in any given situation is just to state the facts, right? If you go into a conversation that you know is going to be contentious based on opinions or perceptions, it's never going to go right. I always took an approach to where I highlighted the problem by the facts. I highlighted the actions, factual actions, shortcomings of the person that was part of the problem. And then I followed up with my opinions on what they could do to actually fix the issue and never let it happen again. And that was the door that I opened, that anybody that came and spoke to me, they knew that they didn't need to put excuses on the table. They knew that I was going to set the conversation because they wanted to fix it and never let it repeat again. And that is a great situation for any leader to be in, for people to know that you're never going to be judgmental, that you're just going to go ahead and act upon the facts of the situation, and that you're always going to help them overcome whatever failure they're facing.
You talk about getting back to basics and deciding to be all in or all out. For someone listening right now who feels stuck or complacent in their current role, what is the first step to checking their alignment and getting all in?
Always the first step is look into history. Humans, we tend to think that if we stop to go ahead and put thought into something, that we're going to miss so many things because of the speed of information, the speed of actions, with the technological age and so on. I always like to tell people to just go ahead and take a step back and look on, say that it is a organizational culture issue. Look at the history of the organization, look at the successes and failures, and then try to correlate the situation that you're living in at the moment, whether it's a success or a failure, with what the unit has done in the past. The same goes for any organization. If you know the history of how the organization got to where they are today, chances are you're going to realize that every problem that comes your way, if you know the history, that seldom is going to be a brand new problem. It's something that we have dealt before. And then what that does to the human is that it tells them, it's like, hey, man, it's no biggie. Yeah, we screwed up, but we screwed up before, and this is what we did to fix it. So let's go ahead and make sure that people know what they need to do in order to prevent this particular incident from happening. But always knowing the historical data of the problem typically helps you come up with the best solutions.
We live in an era of which is heavily dominated by remote work and digital communications. But for you, advocate for interaction over internet. How can leaders maintain a fierce, cohesive, carnivore-style team culture when they aren't looking their people face to face every day?
One of the best methods to do that, in the absence of face-to-face communications, is a simple phone call, one-on-one. Just to call somebody and just basically hear their voice, be able to go ahead and be engaged with just them at any time, just to let them know exactly what your expectations are, figure out if there's something going on with them. And people will value that. And we have evolved over the years on that method. At some point, we used to write paper notes to people to realize that, hey, this is personal from me to you, to be able to know that I'm thinking specifically of you. Now, in the digital age, email's not the answer to that. While people may relate, well, we went from paper communication to email, that is not it. Now, maybe a verbal check on someone can potentially be the difference of them knowing exactly where you stand when it comes to the situation and how much you care about them.
Yeah, pick up the phone. One of the silver bullets in the book is, if you want to fly with eagles, don't hang around with turkeys. Do you want to explain that to us?
Yeah, we become the company that we keep, right?
Yeah.
And to me, that was ingrained early on in my childhood years. My parents didn't care how long I was out, who I was playing with, as long as it was the right crowd.
Yeah.
If they got the sense that one of the bad apples of the neighborhood was going to be in there, then that was a no-go for them. And eventually, when you get into your school years, then you go into your college years, specifically in the military, you get to see the people that are truly dedicated to service and the ones that were just collecting a paycheck. So again, that's the difference between eagles and turkeys, because eventually you're going to do something with that crowd that is going to start defining you.
Yeah.
I heard a long time ago that if you hang out with smokers, you eventually start smelling like smoke. And it's no different with the carnivores and the herbivores. Your reputation is going to basically be shaped by the people that you surround yourself with.
And also, one of your silver bullets is always leave the workplace better than how you found it.
That is correct. We live also in an era to where people just like to show up and believe that they're going to reap the highest rewards of the organizations. Well, I did my job, therefore I get. No, no. One of the things that every organization values is an employee that is wanting to advance that organization to the next level. And it doesn't matter what position you're in. It is just your effort, your mindset, what you're doing to bring forward the organization and thinking about something that nobody else is thinking about. But with that mentality, you got to have the right leadership that is willing to accept that input to be able to go ahead and evolve along with the people, the talent that they have in their formations.
So if our listeners and watchers only remember one core truth from Carnivore Leadership when they walk into their workplace tomorrow morning, what do you want that truth to be?
Be true to the core, be humble, always lead with accountability, and always act upon intellect, not rumors, not whatever you read on the internet, always digging into the facts in order to have a rational, professional, and valuable conversation.
CZ, thank you so much for coming on and talking about your book, Carnivore Leadership, Taking Charge Instead of Taking Shit. If I wanted to get a copy of this, where could I get one from?
You can get it at Barnes and Noble. Amazon is global. As a matter of fact, I just got an email from one of my teammates from Moldova. He just finally got his copy. So
Excellent.
yeah, and so you can also have the audio version on the Audible, on Apple Books, and also on Amazon.com.
And if we wanted more information about you, where can we get that from?
All of my information, my social media links, and everything is again on www.carnivoreleader.com.
CZ, thank you so much for coming in and talking about it and sharing your insights and